Alright, what is up, God Gamers? Yes, we are doing another, and hopefully the last one for a while until the next raid comes out. A tier list of all the raids and where I think they place, where I think, some are better than others, what I think are the best, what I think are the worst, and we're just going to get right into it. So yeah, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I appreciate all of you, and let's jump right into it. So I know these tier lists tend to be quite divisive, and a lot of people think my opinions suck, and you know what, that's fine. That's your opinion. I have my own personal opinions, my own personal preferences, especially when it comes to certain raids I like better than others. Even if maybe, like, mechanically speaking, certain raids aren't better, maybe I just have more fun with them, or maybe I just enjoy the experience more, and that's kind of just how I feel about some of these raids. But we're going to get right into it and see where they rank. Now, we do have a couple duplicate ones because we have some from D1 and D2. As you can see, we have Vault of Glass D1 and we have King's Fall D1. I'm going to rank both of those along with King's Fall and Vault of Glass D2, and we're going to start off with Vault of Glass D1. And if I'm being completely honest, for however legendary this raid is for being the first one, I think honestly Vault of Glass D1 is probably D tier. And the only reason it is because it did not hold up over time at all. It didn't, guys. I know a lot of people have so many soft spots for Vault of Glass D1, but it's a very boring raid besides the Atheon fight. The Atheon fight is pretty good, and it's pretty much almost the exact same as it is in Destiny 2. There's a couple changes, like with the Oracles, I know that, but I think Vault of Glass D1 is really, really boring, if I'm being honest, until the Atheon fight. The Atheon fight is a lot of fun, but other than that, it's just really boring. So I'm going to put Vault of Glass D1 in D tier. Vault of Glass D2, however, I'm going to put in A tier because I feel like they fixed all of the problems I had with the original Vault of Glass, which was it was too boring. Now, don't get me wrong, Vault of Glass D2 does have its boring moments, although I think it is really, really good. I think it's a much better improvement, a much better step up from the original one, and I think they just improved those little incremental changes that make it just a little more engaging. And the Atheon fight is similar, but it's not the exact same thing, so that's what I appreciate about it. So Vault of Glass D2 gets A tier from me. Crota's End, I'm going to put in F tier. I feel like everybody said everything they have to say about Crota's End and how they don't really want it to return. I think everybody is on the same page that Wrath of the Machine is coming back this year. I don't think anybody's really, unless some people actually think Crota's End is coming back this year, I doubt it. But I think Crota's End is F tier. I don't think it's more of a dungeon in terms of scale and size and encounters. I know it only has 4 encounters, and even the new raid, Ron, has 4 encounters, but Crota's End is just such a small scale raid. It's not very fun. The loot wasn't great until year 3 when they brought Age of Triumph back. The weapons for Crota were kind of bad, so the incentive to play it wasn't really there, and it was the first soloable raid, and for it being the second raid, it's just not. I don't like Crota's End at all. Moving on from that, we have King's Fall D1. I think I'm going to put King's Fall D1 in A tier. I think it does have some problems, although I love King's Fall. I know that's going to be a divisive pick. I just don't think it's S tier anymore, and I'm going to just do this right now. I think King's Fall D2 is S tier because I think it is a perfect raid. I think King's Fall D2 is a phenomenal experience. It's a perfect raid. It improved all of these small changes that King's Fall D1 had. Mainly, and the main one that everybody really thinks about or comes to mind is the actual Oryx boss fight. Being able to actually DPS Oryx is such a big improvement. I always hated doing Oryx in D1 because you never actually got to fight him. You got to shoot him at the end for final stand, whatever. But I think King's Fall D2 is just such a massive improvement over King's Fall D1. So I think King's Fall D1 is still A tier, but I think King's Fall D2 is S tier for sure. Moving on from that, what came after? We have Wrath of the Machine, S tier. Need I say more about Wrath of the Machine? I will say how I feel, but come on, guys. Wrath of the Machine, I'm gonna put it over King's Fall because Wrath of the Machine is my favorite raid, and it has been my favorite raid, arguably since Last Wish. We'll get into that. But it's just everything about Wrath of the Machine is so perfect. The Zamboni fight, the opening encounter is fun. Axis Phase 1 and Phase 2. The first boss, which I'm forgetting the name of. Trying to think of it, I can't really remember, but the doors, the amount of funny moments I had with those doors, the second encounter, I guess. Oh my gosh, man, I have so many memories of Wrath of the Machine, and it is my favorite raid in terms of encounters and challenge, and then also loot. I think the loot from Wrath of the Machine was just phenomenal. So Wrath of the Machine is the best raid in my opinion. Moving on from that, what came after? we had Leviathan. I think Leviathan, I originally put it in A tier in my last tier list like a month ago, but I'm thinking Leviathan's probably a B tier. Although I have to give Leviathan credit for having one of the best boss fights with Callus. I think that Callus fight is such a good encounter. The rest of the raid, kind of not. That's why I'm putting it in B tier. But I think that Callus fight is S tier in terms of encounters or raid encounters. Raid boss encounters is what I'm trying to say. That Callus fight's amazing. The rest of the raid, meh. Especially like the dogs encounter, the baths encounter. They're just kind of boring. They're not really too challenging, and they're not really, like, the loot from it wasn't amazing, if I'm being honest. Like, there was a couple guns and stuff, and the armor's pretty cool, but like, let's be honest. I mean, with the static rolls back in Year 1 Destiny 2, unless they bring it back and they bring random rolls to it, then I'll be very happy with the loot. But once you got one gun, you didn't really have to get another one. You know what I mean? But moving on from that, what came after? We had Eater of Worlds. Eater of Worlds is promptly D tier in my opinion. The only reason I think it's not F tier, even with it being a raid layer, is because I actually really enjoy the final boss encounter of Eater of Worlds. That field where you have to jump from all three sides, and then you had to jump to the middle, and you had to like align with the Vex thing. I don't even know what the names were of it, but like it was a lot of fun. I remember it being so challenging. And I had a lot of fun with it. The loot kind of sucked though. That's why it's, you know, at the bottom of the list. But like that final boss fight was pretty cool. Moving on from that, we have Spire of Stars, which is probably going to get an F tier. That entire raid was annoying, and the final boss fight was challenging for absolutely no reason. I did touch that in my last tier list video, but I just like Spire Stars is just a headache. Like the definition of a headache. Like this raid, that raid is a headache. Yeah. And I'm glad it's not in the game anymore, and I really hope it never comes back. Moving on from that, we got, oh, here it is, Last Wish. I feel like everybody's said everything they need to say about Last Wish. It's arguably the best raid in the game. I kind of want to put it over King's Fall, but it is one of, if not the best raid in the game. The amount of encounters, the amount of challenge. If you do Riven legit, it's amazing. It's literally amazing. It is a perfect raid because of like atmosphere, the weapons, the armor, the encounters, the challenge, the difficulty, the lore in the raid is some of the best lore in a raid we've ever gotten. It's perfect. Moving on from that, we had Scourge of the Past, which I am probably going to put Scourge in C tier. I'm also going to put Crown of Sorrow in C tier. Reason being, I think both these raids suffer pretty much of the exact same issue, which is lack of giving a shit. You know what I mean? Like, like I don't really care about what's happening in these raids. They really did feel like filler raids, kind of like the raid layers in a sense, but they were meant to be full raids. Don't get me wrong though, like Scourge of the Past, the loot, and the actual boss fight. Sepix? No, it wasn't Sepix. I always forget the final boss fight names, or the final boss's names. But Scourge is so good. Especially that first encounter in Scourge, the opening encounter with the map. I think that's one of the best things they've ever done for a raid, and I really enjoy that. And then with Crown of Sorrow, it's kind of the exact opposite. The last encounter of Crown of Sorrow is really good. I actually really enjoy the Galron fight. It is a little slow at times, but I enjoy the whole hands mechanic. I enjoy the whole like pillar mechanic. It's really fun, and I actually really enjoy the loot from Crown of Sorrow. I kind of wish that raid was still in the game because the loot from that is actually really solid. Moving on from Crown of Sorrow, we have Garden of Salvation, and I'm promptly going to put Garden of Salvation in C tier. Garden of Salvation is a very boring and taxing on the brain headache. There's a lot of meaningless stuff that goes on in this raid, and it's a lot of just busy work, and it's kind of just boring. The first boss is kind of a joke, and then if I'm being honest, the final encounter is pretty engaging, where you have to have 2 people build and then 4 people run. I know there's certain ways you can get around it, but Garden is actually a decent raid, but it is quite boring, so that's why I feel like it belongs in C tier. But at the same time, it's one of the most beautiful raids they've ever made. And I actually really enjoy the weapons. I'm not really crazy about the armor from the raid, but the weapons are really strong. Especially like the fusion, the bow, the pulse, the sniper, like pretty much everything, the hand cannon, everything from that raid is really good. But yeah, like the armor kind of sucks, but like the atmosphere of that raid is so good. So I think it deserves C. I don't think it deserves any higher or lower. I think it's just promptly a C tier raid. Moving on from that, we have Deepstone Crypt, and I am promptly going to put Deepstone in B. Mainly because this raid is so easy, I would put it in A. I would argue even putting it in S because I really enjoy the mechanics of Deepstone, having scanner, operator, and suppressor, having 3 different jobs you have to do and rotating the buffs. I think that's a genius idea, but I think the raid's just a little too easy, and I think it's been easy since it came out. I kind of wish they would give it a master mode, make it difficult, because the ads in this raid are just kind of a joke. Taniks is kind of a joke. Aatrax, you can one phase, and it's kind of hard not to one phase Aatrax. But I gotta say, man, the scale and the scope of this raid and the atmosphere is so beautiful. The weapons, the armor, it's all great. It's just too easy. There's not enough challenge in Deepstone Crypt. That's my biggest complaint with it, is that it's just really, really easy. Moving on from that, we have Vow, and I am promptly going to put Vow in. I originally put it in A tier in my last tier list. I think Vow is S tier. I think Vow is S tier. I think it's just so cool. Like, cool is the best word I could use to describe Vow. Like, the armor is amazing. The weapons are probably arguably the best raid weapons we've ever got. Yeah, I mean, especially with like them being crafted now, like the weapons from this raid are so good. The encounters are so good, especially that 3rd encounter. I forget what it's called. Once again, I literally can never remember the names of these encounters. But the 3rd encounter where you have to juggle the relics between room to room, I think that is one of the most difficult things to like teach new people, and I love that challenge. I think it's a lot of fun because you have 3 buffs that do completely different things, and trying to teach new players, like, you need to pick up this one in this room, and then you need to pick up this one in the final room, and you have to do this, this, and this. You have to go here, here, here. I think it's very jumbled, and it's very like, you can get panicked very easily, and one thing can screw you up. So it's really, really challenging, and I really enjoy Vow. Also, the Rogue fight, one of the best boss fights we've ever had. I might have ranked Vow a little bit too low in my previous tier list, but if I'm being completely honest, the only part that drags for this for me is the opening encounter, which is, you know, the perdition, or no, what's the name of the mission? I forget. It's that mission now that they made into an exotic mission last year for the exotic glaives. The opening encounter kind of sucks, and then the beginning of Rogue is also kind of sucks. I just think it's kind of boring. I don't really like the mechanic of having to split the buffs or anything like that. But the actual fighting Rogue with the whole thing with the glaive and dunking on the 4 pillars, I think is really, really good. But yeah, the beginning of Rogue and then the opening encounter of Vow are just not the best, but everything else about that raid is amazing. And then we come to our final endeavor here, Root of Nightmares. Now, initially, when I ranked the raids right after Ron came out, I think I put it in A tier. I gotta be honest here, guys. I'm kind of feeling a D tier on Root. I gotta be completely honest. I want to give it the credit for having really cool weapons and really cool armor, and the atmosphere being the most beautiful like raid we've probably ever had. It's right up there with Garden of Salvation, to be honest. But I gotta say, it's just I don't know what Bungie was thinking with this one, if I'm being honest. Like, the more time I have to think about Ron and the easier this raid gets to me, the more I'm like, man, like, is this challenging to Bungie? Does Bungie think this is difficult? Having 2 people be able to do the entire mechanic of the raid the whole time, minus the 3rd encounter, which I think the 3rd encounter, the planets encounter, is the best encounter out of all of them. Mainly because it requires at least at a minimum of 4 people doing something. But like the rest of the raid, only 2 people have to do anything. And it's kind of just like ad clear the raid. And that really pisses me off. Because like, say what you will about something like Garden of Salvation or Crown of Sorrow, like the Galaron fight or the Scourge of the Past opening encounter, you at least had to have like 3 or 4 people doing something throughout that entire raid. Like, you couldn't have just the majority of your team killing ads like you can in Ron. You could literally have somebody start to finish be carried through Ron, not know anything that's going on, not know any mechanics. Like, can you really say that about any other raid in here besides maybe like Crota? I don't really think you can. I think every other raid besides Ron requires at least 3 or 4 people to be able to do anything or to understand the mechanics to get past encounters. I could be wrong on that, but like, you get what I'm trying to say. Like, it requires the majority of your team not doing anything, and I think that was a big misstep. But yeah, guys, that's gonna do it for the tier list video. I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. I want to know where you guys rank these raids, if you think I'm an idiot, if you think I'm wrong. Personally, I think this is probably the final list I'll do until I guess Wrath comes back in D2 in what's it called, season 22. But you know, you never know. Maybe I'll make another one in like a month or two. But I feel like this really accurately represents how I feel about these raids and where they are. Remember, we only have a handful of these raids that are on this list even in the game right now. And, you know, I really hope that when and if they do bring back Wrath of the Machine, it is really, really good. And it still is my favorite raid. Or I hope it, after it comes out in D2, I hope it's still my favorite raid. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe. I appreciate all of you. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. All right.